My camera's off. Oh, no, it's just closed. Hey, what's going on, guys? So, today should be a quick one. There's 4 questions that we're going to be doing, but each one of these questions kind of, I hope, are going to be self explanatory as we start going into them. Uh, Here's what we did yesterday. I have it up on the screen. This was from part of page 1, I guess I should say. Um, yeah, I'm just waiting along. I see a few of you guys are popping in as we speak. So I'll just wait a second just to make sure that we get the maximum amount of viewers. I almost didn't want to get on. I was working outside and then I saw the time and I'm like, I better go teach the lesson. It's so beautiful out. Hey, what's going on, Tabitha? Yeah, it's just so beautiful out. I don't want to be doing math. I know you guys don't want to be doing math. But this will be the last lesson we have until Tuesday next week. Tomorrow we don't teach a lesson. I'll still be on for Zoom if you guys need me. Monday we don't have school. No lessons for any of your classes because it's Memorial Day. And then Tuesday we'll get back at it. So next week is really only going to be a 3-day lesson week. Um, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I might just start teaching the lesson. There's only 3 people in here right now, but I might just say screw it. There might be more people, but it's only showing 3 people on my end, so whatever. Yeah, so we talked about secant, cosecant, and cotangent yesterday. Those were the 3 new trig functions, and I hope you guys are recognizing that they're exactly the same as cosine, sine, and tangent, but they're just upside down. Okay? So, as far as today goes, I'm going to scroll down to exercise number 3. Same typical problem that we did yesterday. It's using one of the new trigs. It says, which of the following values of theta is not in the domain of y equals cosecant theta? So, right now, we can't solve that unless we change it into its reciprocal. So I know we just started yesterday, so I don't expect you guys to have this memorized. So I'm going to scroll back up top. Cosecant is going to be the one in the middle. Cosecant is the same thing as saying 1 over sine. So I'm just going to flip this over, and I'm going to rewrite it as 1 over sine theta. Okay. So now our goal is to figure out when theta is not in the domain. So we want to figure out which one of those answers does not work. Okay? So, essentially what we're doing is we're going to do 1 over sine 60. 1 over sine of 135. 1 over sine 90 and 1 over sine 180. Now, if we have a fraction, so I'm not going to do anything in the calculator yet. I'm not going to solve anything out, but we have a fraction. And I just want you guys to recall when we used to do domain with fractions, there was something that's not allowed to happen in a fraction. And if that is the case, we have to recall that fractions cannot have 0 in the denominator. With that being said, we just have to figure out which one of those 4 answers on the bottom is equal to 0. So basically all I'm going to do is just type all 4 of those in to my calculator and just figure out, hey, whichever one's 0 we know has to be the answer because that's not allowed to happen in the bottom. So first of all, I'm going to make sure my calculator is in degree mode. I did switch it in yesterday's lesson, so it does still say degree. Just make sure you switch it over to degree if you have not. And now I'm just going to type all these in. So I got sine of 60. That's going to give me 0.866 blah, 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 blah. We need to find when 0's in the denominator because it's not in the domain. So we know that this first one, and this is A, cannot be the answer. So now I'm going to check B. So I'm just going to type in sine of 135. And it's going to give me 0.707. So we know B cannot be the answer. So I'm just going to keep working with it. The next one is going to be sine of 90. That gives me an answer of 1. Well, 1 over 1 is okay, so that means C cannot be the answer. So that means we know it has to be D, but I'm just going to type it in. And if we do sine of 180 degrees, it does come out to be 0. So if we were to plug 0 in the bottom of that fraction, it will not work. Okay, so just make sure you guys are reading it carefully. It says theta cannot be in the domain. Okay? So like I said, these are going to be kind of brief. I'm mixing in some old stuff that we've done with these new functions, and we're just going with it. Number 4 and 5, we've actually have already done before. We just haven't done them with the new trig functions. We only did them with sine, cosine, and tangent. So I want you guys to recall, I'm going to draw it above it. We did some letters that we put in all 4 quadrants, and it was A, S, T, C. So that stood for, if we start from the first quadrant, add sugar to coffee. All are positive, sine is positive, tangent is positive, and cosine is positive. So what I want you guys to understand that is when we go into the reciprocal functions, it's still going to be the same thing. So if I have sine theta versus 1 over sine theta, which we said is cosecant, if sine theta is positive, that means 1 over sine theta is positive. Because if you flip a fraction upside down, it's not going to change the value of the sign. Like if I have 5 and I flip it upside down, did it become negative? No. When we do reciprocals, it still stays positive. So even though we flipped sine theta over, cosecant is still going to be positive. The same thing would happen if we did cosine all the way over to secant. If cosine's positive, that means 1 over cosine is positive, so that means secant is positive. If cosine was negative, that means 1 over cosine is negative, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do the reciprocal and then check to see which quadrant it falls in, and that will tell us if it's positive or negative. So this one down here in part A, it says cotan theta, or cot theta. Cotan theta is the reciprocal of tangent. And we are in quadrant 2. So quadrant 2 is letter S. Okay? After I do a couple of them, Sierra, you might start picking up on it. So because tangent is what we're talking about here, I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to look at my grid. Okay? It says we're in quadrant 2. The only thing that is positive in quadrant 2 is sine. I'm just going to write it right underneath. Come on. iPad doesn't want to write. Holy cow, my viewer count just jumped right up. I don't know if you guys were all here for exercise number 3, but I'll zoom out so you guys can see it. Is it writing yet? No, still doesn't want to write. Still doesn't want to write. It's letting me go back and forth though. Did my pencil die? My iPad's about to die. Oh, it says my pencil's not even connected anymore. Well, that ain't good. Connect. Oh yeah, my pencil died. Thanks for letting me know, iPad. So, anyways, if we're looking at quadrant 2, the only thing that is positive is sine. Okay? I know I've said that a few times, but I'm just trying to delay the time. Right. So sine is the only thing that's positive there. Well, since we're talking about tangent, tangent cannot be positive then. So it just wants us to determine the sine. That means this is going to have to be negative. Because tangent is only positive in the tangent quadrant, and it's only going to be positive in the all quadrant. So really, the sine is just going to stay the same based on the quadrant that you're in. Okay? So let's try secant. So secant is 1 over cosine. And it's okay if you guys don't have that memorized. That's what's at the top of the first page. Okay? So 1 over cosine. Well, this says that we have to look at quadrant 4. So if I go to quadrant 4 inside my grid, the only thing that is positive is cosine. So that means because I have cosine, and cosine is in quadrant 4, this would just be known as positive. Okay? And you guys have to remember cosine represents the x value and sine represents the y value. So that's where all those letters came from. If I go over to the right on my grid, cosine's the x value, so the x is positive. So that means this would have to be positive. The last one is cosecant. So cosecant is the reciprocal to 1 over sine. There is a quadrant number in C. It's quadrant 4. Oh, you're talking about in this part C. I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about the C up here. Let's say in quadrant... Let's do quadrant 3. Maybe I accidentally deleted it. I don't know. So we'll say this is quadrant 3. So if we go to quadrant 3 is tangent. So the only thing that is positive in the third quadrant is t. Well, since we have sine, that means it cannot be positive. Sine is the y value. So the y values are all down here. So that means the y value is going to have to be negative. That means cosecant, or 1 over sine, is also just going to be negative. Okay, iPad. Oh my gosh. I got to remember to bring in my iPad tomorrow. I'm going to the school tomorrow to print some stuff off, and I'll bring my iPad in so I can finally update Notability. Because Notability, I don't know, there was some update a month ago, and it does not work well here at my house. So the reason why I just did exercise number 4 with you guys is because exercise number 5 would be a question you would see on a Regents exam. I know you guys aren't taking the exam, but for lesson purposes, I'm just saying so. So it says exercise number 5, if cotan theta is less than 0 and secant theta is greater than 0, then theta would be in what quadrant? So I'm going to zoom in down here. So this is saying it's less than 0, so we know that this is going to be negative. And we know that secant is greater than 0, so we know that this needs to be positive. Okay? But because they're the reciprocal functions, we can't use that trick that I taught you guys a week or 2 ago about the add sugar to coffee. So I'm going to move... I'll just copy it and paste it. I'm going to put that down here. Well, cotangent is the same thing as saying the reciprocal of 1 over tan. So tan is now upside down. Secant is the same thing as the reciprocal as 1 over cosine. So by flipping it over and changing it to the reciprocal, we can now use the trick that's inside the add sugar to coffee. So the first one is tan, or 1 over tan, and we said it's negative. So we have to come over here and figure out which quadrants the tangent is negative in. Well, tangent can be negative, and I'm going to color code this to make this a little bit easier for you guys. I'm going to change this to, I'll just change that to red. So tangent is going to be negative in this quadrant because only sine is positive there. And it's also going to be negative in this quadrant down here because only cosine is positive. Okay? Now when I go to do the next part, 1 over cosine. So we're looking for where cosine is positive. Well, we know that cosine is positive down here because that is what the C stands for. And we also know that it's positive up here with the A because A stands for all is positive. Well, we want to know which quadrant are both of them true. Well, the only ones that they overlapped in was the 4th quadrant. So quadrant 4 is when they both would be the same. Okay. Next one is going to be very, very similar again. So it says, if theta is an angle whose terminal ray lies in the 4th quadrant of a unit circle, and cosine theta is equal to 1/3, then determine the exact value of cosecant theta. All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to first start off, I don't like using the reciprocal functions. So I always change them so they're in the words that we do know. It's the trig that we do know. So I'm going to start off with this cosecant right here. I don't like cosecant, so I'm going to switch it. So it's 1 over, and cosecant is always going to be 1 over sine theta. So they want us to determine cosecant, but the only way we can do that is if we figure out what sine is. So we got to figure out what sine is first, and then whatever that answer is, we're just going to flip it over and we're done. Well, in order to find sine, notice it says that we're talking about the unit circle. So we did the unit circle back more towards the beginning to the middle of unit number of 11. But if you're trying to find the missing trig using the unit circle, there was a Pythagorean theorem formula that we used. And that formula was cosine theta squared plus sine theta squared is equal to 1, because when we're in the unit circle, it just means the radius in the entire circle is always going to be 1. Now what we're going to do is we know what cosine is, so we can plug it in. So cosine is 1/3. So I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to have 1/3 squared. So this beginning part is something that we already did in the lessons. I'm going to repeat it all, and I'm going to show you the one new step. So I have 1/3 squared plus sine theta squared is equal to 1. 1/3 squared is really just going to be 1/9. Come on. I hope my pen didn't just die again. Nope, it's just my iPad being lame. And now I got to get sine theta all by itself. So in order to get sine theta all by itself, I got to first subtract the 1/9 over to the other side. If we were to do 1 minus 1/9, oops, I'm just going to tell you guys that answer comes out to be 8/9. And then the last thing that we have to do is get rid of the squared. And if we get rid of the squared, we're going to have sine theta is equal to the square root of 8 all over the square root of 9, which we can reduce. If we reduce that, it would just be the square root of 8 over 3. Oh my gosh. I hate notability. Oh my gosh, you stupid, stupid notability. And that will be equal to sine theta. So that is what we did back in like unit, or it would have been lesson like 5 or 6. And we would have stopped. There's just one extra step that we have to do now. Because they didn't ask us to find sine. Remember, they asked us to find cosecant. And cosecant is just 1 over sine. So what we need to do is, in order to change it to cosecant, it's telling us that we just need to flip the fraction over. So I'm just going to flip it over. And that would be the answer to this problem. I know it's not simplified. Technically, you guys would have to simplify it down by multiplying it or rationalizing it. And we've done that a few times already. We have to get rid of the square root of 8 on the bottom. And in order to do that, we just have to multiply it by square root of 8. So really, the answer would be 3 square root of 8 all over 8. But that's just in its reduced form. If you guys left it as 3 over square root of 8, I would have been fine with that. Just know in the future, if you're taking pre-calc or if you're going to take Math 12 with me, I'm going to request that you guys reduce it down. Okay? So that's all I got for you guys today. It was kind of a short lesson. We only went like 20 minutes. Homework number 10. As you guys see with number one, I want you guys to do it by hand like we did yesterday. And then in number 2, you can use your calculator. So if you want to go through and use your calculator in number 2, you can. You got a couple multiple choice questions. And then number 5 is just like what we did today. And number 6 is like the last question we did. So you have to use Pythagorean theorem to figure out what cosine is, and then that will allow you to find all the other missing ones on here. So if you're having any trouble, you guys got my email, shoot me a message. I still will be doing Zoom tomorrow. Like I said at the beginning of this lesson, I don't know if everybody was actually in Twitch yet at the time. I will still be in Zoom tomorrow if you guys want to stop down and ask any questions. Otherwise, no lesson tomorrow, no lesson Monday. Our next math lesson won't be until Tuesday. So hopefully we have some beautiful weather this weekend. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Yeah, I got nothing else. All right. So I will catch you guys all soon. Have a great time. Enjoy the weather. See you guys.